Clemson currently sits at number 11 in the On3 Industry 2024 recruiting rankings, but they're starting to heat up on the recruiting trail. So let's bring on Clemson insider for On3, Jeremy Johnson. Jeremy, welcome to the show. A big decision is looming for an important player at a position of need for the Tigers, as this Saturday, four-star QB Air Noland is set to make his big decision. Now, Clemson has been sitting in his top 7, and the Tigers even hosted him on a visit in March. What are your thoughts on where Clemson stands about 48 hours out from his announcement?
I feel like they're definitely in it. They are definitely a program that he is very, high on and he's going to consider. I do feel like they're kind of in that second tier of teams at the moment. I don't feel like they are, the favorite. I don't feel like, they're the runaway team at this point. And I'm sure there's still some talks going on and maybe he eventually makes that decision. But I don't anticipate Clemson kind of being the program to beat at the moment, at least.
Who do you think is in that top tier for Air Noland? Because if it's not Clemson, about a week ago, I had Sam Spiegelman on and we were debating, do you think he's going to end up at Miami or do you think he's going to end up at Clemson? Now, a lot's happened since then. He took a trip to Texas A&M. He took a trip to Ohio State and Alabama. So why do you think Clemson's slipping?
I don't necessarily think it's a slip. I really just feel like, they kind of came on the scene a little late and, he built relationships with a lot of these other programs earlier. Mm-hmm. And, they've been in on him for a while, even before they offered. As soon as Coach Riley got in there, they were in contact. And I think he'd had conversations with them before, so they were familiar with one another. But, I feel like, it's just some other programs that have just kind of, separated themselves for him.
So what does Dabo do if Air Noland goes elsewhere? Is there somebody else on the board that's up next? Or do you think they put a pause on everything and maybe double back on somebody that's already committed to a program?
I don't know. I think they'll probably start looking towards that 2025 class, to be honest. They've had about 4 guys on campus already. They've had Ryan Montgomery, George McGinty, Antoine Hill, Cutter Boley. Some of these other guys in the class of 2025, they seem to be getting a little bit of a head start on. And, I think Clemson is in a good spot with a quarterback where, you brought in Christopher Vizina last year. The year before that, you had Cade Klubnik, who's kind of the guy in taking over for this year. So, I don't know necessarily that they have to have a quarterback in 24. I do feel like Noland is a priority for them. It's just, it's looking like, that's going to be a tough battle moving over the next couple days.
All right, let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball. And Clemson has hosted 5-star linebacker Sammy Brown on 2 visits this month. Most recently, he was in town on Monday. Who do you think has the edge here as we kind of hit the mid-spring point?
Right now, I would say Clemson has a little bit of an edge. I definitely think Georgia is right there, and I think it'll be that way until he makes a decision. They're going to flip-flop. They're going to be, you'll hear one week that, Georgia's got an edge. You'll hear the next week Clemson has an edge. I think, obviously he feels Clemson has a really tight connection with Clemson. His family grew up with a Christian background. Obviously, Dabo Swinney and that staff really value that. So I think he's really connected with them and the staff. I really do feel like Clemson is definitely in a good spot right there, at the moment at least.
That'd be a big get for them. One of the best linebackers in America and especially in the Southeast. All right, another prospect that was on campus is 4-star wide receiver Cam Coleman. He's a guy that On3 has been high on for a very long time, and his recruitment has absolutely blown up over the course of the last, I'd say, 3 or 4 months. And this week, another big offer for Cam Coleman. Tigers jump in the race. Is it too late for them? Where do you think Clemson stands for Cam Coleman out of Alabama?
I don't think it's too late. I do think they will be one of those programs that are going to be in the race. They're going to have a little ground to make up just because they are kind of a little later in the process. But, I really feel like there's so many connections between him and Clemson. You got his teammate, Tamarian Parker, that's there. Caleb Nix was his quarterback 2 years ago. He now plays safety for Clemson. His father is Patrick Nix, who also his brother is Bo Nix. So, that family loves Clemson. There's going to definitely be some good words put in there. And, I really feel like Clemson's culture really matches what Cam stands for as a person. So, I do think Auburn and LSU and some of those other programs are, in good spots as well. But, I don't think it's too late. I do think it'll be Clemson once they get him on campus. If he does take an official visit, that's where they'll make their ground up. I don't know that he has an official. He didn't seem like he had one set as of now, but I do think that's something to watch for, over the next couple of weeks, whether he sets one for Clemson or not.
Yeah, it sounded like he had a great visit, and it should put Clemson right there in the middle of his recruitment, at least for now. We can't talk wide receiver recruiting if we don't bring up Mike Matthews. The 5-star wide receiver narrowed his list to a top 12. Now, for somebody that has 50, 60 offers, I mean, cutting it down to a top 12 is sort of significant. But let's dig a little deeper there, Jeremy. Who are the real contenders for Mike Matthews right now?
It's going to sound a lot like Sammy Brown's recruitment. You're going to have Georgia, you're going to have Clemson, and USC's that other team that's in there. They'll get an official visit. I really feel like those are kind of the teams. Auburn, that dual sport opportunity is big for them, just to be able to, the first team to kind of jump out there on that opportunity. But I think Clemson's in a good spot to battle for this one. I don't necessarily think they have an edge one way or the other right now, but Georgia's going to be in there. I know he loves Georgia. Every time I see him, he's got on Georgia gloves. So, but I think Clemson has a real shot as well.
How important do you think having a quarterback in this class is to some of these higher ranked wide receivers? Because I know Clemson has some very talented quarterbacks on campus, but you see a lot of peer-to-peer recruiting. Like you see Julian Sayin out there recruiting for his team. You see some of these top-end quarterbacks bringing in wide receivers. So what does Clemson need to do to land somebody like a Mike Matthews without a quarterback committed?
I think, if they don't get a quarterback, I do think the on-the-field product needs to showcase that they can showcase these guys once they get on campus. If a guy like Mike Matthews were to show up, is he going to get 12 targets a game? Because, wide receivers like the football. So, I know, if you can showcase, hey, you got a guy that can go out here and go snag me 10 balls in a game and go to the NFL, be a first-round pick. That's going to be a big attractive piece for some of these guys. And I don't think, we've had the opportunity to see what Coach Riley's offense is going to look like yet. I think we'll get a good taste of that in the spring. So that will probably be their best selling point, just being able to see the spring game, seeing how fast his offense is going to be this year.
Yeah, the spring game should bring out a lot of top recruits. If you're a Clemson fan, this is an exciting time of year. And if you're a Clemson fan, you need to do me a favor. Subscribe to the On3 YouTube page. We have a ton of recruiting content and all your college football news. So go ahead, hit that link right now. Subscribe to the On3 YouTube page. Jeremy, when do you expect Clemson to start really recruiting? Like, I know they're ranked number 11 now, and that's not a concern for any Clemson fans. They've been through this before. It's a long cycle. But when do you expect them to really kick it into high gear?
I think it's starting right now. You're starting to see them start to offer some of these guys that they've been quietly talking to and kind of had their eyes on for a while. You got Ricardo Jones, you got, just mentioned Cam Coleman, a guy they've had an eye on, even Air Noland to a certain extent. They're really starting to ramp up their board a little bit. And I do think, you'll start seeing some commitments pop here, by the end of April, mid-May, then you get into the official visit that comes up in June. They only do one. So, I think you'll get a couple guys that'll pop after that. So it's coming. I can definitely sense the level of urgency starting to pick up with this 2024 class of Clemson.
Yep, spring recruiting into summer recruiting, and it's on from there. Jeremy, thank you for checking in and giving us all that intel on the Clemson Tigers. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank y'all.
Thank you for watching. Make sure you smash that subscribe button for me, and remember to check out all the videos on the On3 YouTube page.